Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this weekend's edition of Book Bites. I'm extremely excited to share my guest and introduce my guest for this evening. I was first introduced to a whole concept called the Corporate Sufi a few years ago when my father picked up copies of the book on one of his travels and attended the book launch. He's been such a great inspiration, and there's a huge range of books that have emerged through this network by author and CEO of and founder of Corporate Sufi Worldwide, Mr. Azim Jamal. He's one of the finest inspirational, life-altering personalities with a global following, no doubt. And his mission is to inspire individuals and corporations to unleash the power within and find harmony between business, balance, and beyond. Assalamu alaikum and welcome. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the show, Mr. Jamal. Azim Jamal, welcome to Book Bites.
Malikum salam. Thank you, Shafinaaz. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I know this evening we'll be talking specifically about your absolutely brilliant new book, which I don't believe in coincidence. I think this book was just meant to find me, and I'm very grateful to, for that. Spark. We always talk about finding the spark in your relationships or reigniting the spark in your work situation or finding joy in life again, finding that spark. But we also know that this title is an acronym. So speak to us about your process. And obviously this is a journey for you over your years of writing and inspiring and doing your workshops. Speak to us about this reigniting the spark and what it means to journey from success to significance.
So when you hear the word spark, the way I define it, it's a spring in your step. There's an echo in your voice. There's a twinkle in your eye. You are flowing and glowing and oozing with energy. You feel like a magnet. Your spark is on no matter what happens outside you, whether it's a good time outside or a bad time outside. Doesn't matter because your spark is not depending on outside factors. It depends on what's inside you.
I love that concept because it's very visual, obviously, and like I said, it comes with so much of loaded meaning for many of us who want to reignite that spark. And at the same time, motivation and a lot of motivational talks and books talk about how to achieve success. This book of yours is going beyond that. It's saying, well, so you're successful, so you're goal-orientated, so you've done this and this and this and this. But has it made a difference? Not in a condescending way. You're saying, but what's next? That what's next is such a significant question. Where to from here? Because we're all goal-orientated, but does that automatically mean we're being purposeful?
Yeah, no, the reason I wrote this book is for the past 25 years, I've been working with many leaders around the world who are very successful. But I think in the journey from success to significance, there is a range. There's a range from 1 out of 10 to 9 out of 10 or 8 out of 10, but very few people get to the highest level of 10 out of 10. And I think the issue really is here that significance is being successful, but also making impact in other people's lives. Being successful in your life and making others successful. So your life is of significance. It's not just success, because success alone is not enough to give you fulfillment, to give you purpose, to give you a higher calling in life. And therefore, it's very important to have that journey from success to significance.
I agree, absolutely. And, as much as this book might relate to people who might have achieved a certain level of success in their lives, I think younger readers would find a lot of relevance as well. We're all we're trying to achieve, we're striving for these various goals, whether those are material goals or whether they're sort of just being a better person. Reading this manual from now, say before we've decided on whether we've been successful or not, already changes the path. It already reassesses the journey to say, not just am I going in the right direction, but am I making that impact on myself in terms of growth? But am I creating something here? Legacy, impact, growth, inspiration. I want to do more. What is that more?
I think, what we're saying here is if you're not successful yet and your goal is to become successful, I think the key question to ask is, what do I really want? Am I climbing on the right ladder to the wall that I want to get to? I think the key is to ask yourself that, yes, I want to be successful because it's important for me to be successful. But if I can fuse significance with success, I don't have to spend 20 years to become successful and 20 more years to become significant. In 20 years, I can be both successful and significant because the journey I'm taking is, founded in the concept of being successful and yet also being significant. It's not either or.
Right. So intention matters, right? How you map out your journey matters.
Yes. And also, what people don't realize is, for example, in my life, I was not very successful in school because I didn't like physics and chemistry and I was not into the science too much. But then luckily I went to do accounting and did my ACCA in England, CPA, Charter of Financial Planning. I had 3 degrees. I did very well in accounting. However, when I changed from accounting for business to accounting for life, when I had a soul-stirring experience working with refugees, this is when I became fearless. I lost my fear because it was not about me anymore. It was about something bigger than me. So when you have a goal larger than self, that's where significance comes in. And that's where the fear goes out because the ego goes out. So ego is about my success, my money, my fame, my this, my that. But when you have a goal bigger than you, which is founded on impact and purpose, a different kind of energy comes into you and you become fearless.
In many ways, you've already sort of touched on the response to my next question, but I'm gonna put it out anyway. Can you be at the top of your game and still be missing something?
I think the idea is that one of my colleagues who has endorsed my book, his name is Harvey McKay. He's the author of The Swim with the Sharks. Has a quote. He says, "The biggest room in the world is a room for improvement." So we all have room for improvement. The day we become perfect is the day you die, right? So there is always going to be room for us to grow and get better. However, the issue is, for example, this new year, 2023, I was at my daughter's house and she had called a group of friends and they were talking about the New Year's resolution. So they asked me, Azim, what is your New Year's resolution for this year? And I said, my resolution is very simple. Every day, I want to make today the most happiest and the most impactful day of my life. So the only goal I have is I don't worry about what happened yesterday. I don't worry about what's happened tomorrow. But today, my goal is to make the day my most happiest and then my most impactful day. If I achieve those 2 things, great day. So basically, you miss something because you're looking for something that maybe, is impossible or cannot be achieved today. But if you're looking for the most happiest day and the most impactful day, yes, you may shortfall in either the happy or the impact, but at least you can evaluate day by day and keep improving. So really missing is really a mind concept and not a concept from within, which really is based on intention, action, and making sure that you do your best and leave the rest, right?
That's true wisdom right there, because when we take goal orientation and what you're missing, you're right. We're allowing ourselves those limitations of thought, and I also appreciate the way you say, the suggestion that if you can make an impact today, and those that don't necessarily have to be these big, mega-looking impacts. It's just what you can do right now and today builds and adds up to tomorrow or to a bigger tomorrow. So I really appreciate that sentiment as well.
I think when you talk about missing, for me, the only time you should feel you're missing something, if you cheat, if you lie, if you do bad things, then you deserve to be upset and shaken and feel I'm missing something because I'm not living my true values. I'm not living my true purpose. I'm not living my spark, which I'm born with, right? This is where if you are shaken, so be it. It's good to be shaken because you're doing something which is not right.
So when I read this book 2 weeks ago, and then I read it again this week because I knew we had the interview, what I really enjoyed was the anecdotal way in which it's told. I mean, we've unpacked some of the acronym, but at the same time, it's written in a very anecdotal way. You've got you're following this journey of Steve, who is this hotshot corporate lawyer. He's doing his thing. He's got his ducks in a row, so to speak. and he's got everything planned. He's a super busy guy and he's super successful. Everyone wants to be, in top of their game, so to speak. But you're telling the story, and we're joining him on this journey. Almost feels like we're writing a novel. Spark is not written in a textbook format. Spark is a story, a very, very engaging story. Tell us more about Steve, because Steve goes through this transformation, which is just so amazing to watch.
So yeah, I think I'm glad you brought up this fable that's in the book. So I think if you look at the book is organized in 6 key areas. Number one, there's a story of Steve, which goes from start to finish. You start the book with Steve and you end the book with Steve. So that's one part. Second part is that Steve goes through a journey from success to significance, which is based on the acronym SPARK. He goes through 5 accidents. S is for service, P is for purpose, A is for attraction, R is for resilience, and K is for knowing. So the acronym SPARK is the journey Steve takes on. So that's the second part. The third part is in each chapter, while the story goes on, in the first chapter, for example, when he goes through an accident which exposes him to service, we stop there and we talk about service. What is service? Service to yourself, service to your family, service to your employees at work, service to stakeholders, service to society, to social causes. And whenever you are in service, you have a spark, because we are born to give. We are hardwired to give. We have an innate need to give. And when you're giving, something happens within you. The spark comes alive, right? So that's S. So the story goes on. In the first chapter, we talk about what service is. And then in the first chapter, after the story and the message of service, we have questions, reflection questions. Ask yourself these questions about service and how to get started. So you have the story going in each chapter, and then you have the message of each chapter, and then you have the workbook exercises in each chapter, and then you have the acronym going through 5 stages. And then the end of the story, end of the book, I share my own story in about 4 to 5 pages, which reflects the story of Steve. Steve is a fable story, but my true story kind of resembles in some way what Steve went through. Because I went through a process where I was exposed to service. In the process, I found my purpose. When I found my purpose, I attracted many accidents that helped me achieve my desires and my aspirations. I had to go through a lot of struggle, so I had to have resilience, not to give up. And then in the end, I had a knowing. And the knowing is not knowledge. Knowing is zero doubt. Because small doubt is too big. When you have zero doubt, what you're doing is the right thing you're doing, then you walk, talk, breathe, sleep, die your purpose. And that's where congruence comes in. And that's where you have spark, no matter what happens outside you.
So there's something very electric about reigniting the spark. And I also found with Steve, through the fable that you're telling, the story, that he's sort of brought to a point where he has to question his prior assumptions. How important is it for us to re-engage and question our assumptions, smash the stereotypes we hold perhaps dear to us, and to engage and interrogate that learning, in order to reignite the spark, in order to break through this rigid journey and find significance?
It's a great question. I think in Steve's case, for example, he wanted to be a CEO of a major corporation. He was doing well in the business side. He was making deals, and now he had a very powerful deal he made, which was almost like a shoe-in for him to get the position he was craving for. But for some reason, he's asked to go to India to meet the founder, which to deliver an envelope, which he thinks is a courier's job. But he didn't have a choice. He had to go there. And when he goes there, he goes through 5 accidents in his life. Now, what happens here is, Shafinaaz, all of us go through some accidents. All of us go through some kind of attraction, meet people on our journey. But the question is, when we meet people by accident, like today somebody might listen to this recording, what are they going to do about it? They might get inspired, but they go back to the same old thing. Or they might get inspired and say, maybe this message is for me, and I need to reflect on it and change my life, to transform my life. So when accidents happen, and Steve had to go through 5 accidents before eventually he got it. He didn't get it right away. Okay, so the issue is we all go through these processes and make shifts here and there, but it takes people to be aware, have heightened awareness, and use this accident as a sign. The word ayat is a sign from God to tell you, you are sidetracking a bit from why you're here. I think Mark Twain
Right.
once said beautifully, there are two very important days in your life: the day you're born and the day you find out why. You see, many people die never finding out why they were born. So the genius lies in their graves. People have died never opening their birthday gift, what they're born with. So when you find this kind of calling or an accident or a reminder, and you get awareness, you got to seize it and capitalize it. And when you have a spark, by the way, you have to fuel the spark every day. You can't just have a spark and let it alone. It's gonna be extinguished, right? So when I had a
Right.
spark 25 years ago, when I did some work with the refugees, I haven't let one day go by, morning or evening, not reminding myself of the spark, because we need to rekindle it all the time to keep you at the top of your game.
So it is about knowing your why in order to sustain this journey of significance.
Yeah, of course. I think the reason is, if you don't have a purpose, then whatever you're doing becomes meaningless, right? And if you are able, if you ask yourself, if you're 90 today, okay, 90 is a symbolic way of saying that you're going to die. 90 is a number. It could be 80, it could be 100. But if your creator comes to you and says, "Welcome back, Shafinaaz. I gave you eyes that were so small, but you could see the stars trillions of miles away. I gave you a brain that was more powerful than a computer. Tell me about your life." And you get 2 minutes to say something. What will you say? And if you're clear about what you'll say in those 2 minutes, and then you align your life, everything you do, the way you walk, talk, breathe, sleep, work, whatever you do, align to that purpose, there's congruence, there's spark, there's magic, because your life has some kind of meaning, some kind of weight in what you do, and that creates the spark that we talk about.
You mentioned a few times the different events that happen in Steve's life, and you said accident, and I kept thinking, but is it an accident? Our lives, how tailor-made are our lives? As much as we have self-determination, because I believe that we do. And talk to us about this this design of life, and what role does this active engagement play and active surrender play in it?
Yeah, I think, the whole idea of the book is, as you aspire, the universe conspires to help you. Okay, so right now we're having this interview, and we had some challenges before we got into the interview today. But why is it today? Why not last week? Why not next month? Why not 3 years later? There's a reason. And if we realize that there is some kind of design in the universe that makes things happen at the right time, the right place, then you become, you are basically in the flow. You trust what's happening, and you have to optimize and capitalize what's coming in your way, right? So yeah, the accidents happen to all of us, but like even in Steve's case, it took him a long time to really get it in the end, to realize that what is happening has come to him for a purpose, for a reason, that what he's chasing for, which is success, is not actually what he wants. He actually wants significance.
I'm glad you mentioned being in the flow state, because in your book you talk about beginner's mind and you talk about being in the flow state, and those sent off sparks in my head when I read about them, because I understand the world disappearing around me when I'm in a state, when I'm writing, when I'm developing new characters as a writer. And I know hours can go, and I've got to set myself boundaries because life needs me outside of my computer as well. But it's such a beautiful feeling to be in that space and know that you know why you're doing what you're doing. Speak to us about beginner's mind. Children have that, children have that sense of wonder that we sometimes lose. So beginner's mind, tell us a little more about it.
So Rumi has a quote. He says, sell cleverness by bewilderment. So when you're bewildered, you're always hungry to know more, to not take things for granted. I think it was Newton once, he said, "I don't care what the world thinks about me, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm like a little boy collecting pebbles on the shore, whereas the whole ocean remains unexplored." So the more you know, the more you realize how little you know. You see, if
Right.
I think once Steve Jobs was asked, how do you run Apple after Apple was so successful? And he said, "I run Apple as a startup." He was running a trillion-dollar business as a startup, because he says when you lose that beginner's mindset, you lose that creativity, then you get static, and it can be the foundation of your failure. Yeah. So yeah, I think having that curiosity of the child, of that hunger, of that, and being in the flow is the clock stops. When you're in the flow, the time stops. It's like, it's like you are so present that 1 minute looks like eternity.
That's beautifully shared wisdom. Thank you for that, because I know it was so impactful. And just having read that piece is going to stay with me throughout my process. And I hope that it inspires a lot more writers, professionals, whoever reads this book. There was another important theme that stood out for me throughout the read of this book was this is a bridge to empathy. I mean, we often talk about writing fiction also as allowing us a view into both the author's mind, but living through the protagonist's story as well, and that is a bridge of empathy. I really saw this with Steve's story. I saw it with Spark. I saw it when his eureka moment happened. It happened for me as well. I had this eureka moment thinking, oh my goodness, look what happened here. This beautiful thing happens without giving it away, because I want people to read it and have that impact. Talk to us about the empathy that's evoked by reading the story, by understanding the story, by intercepting the story. And I know it's about being responsive, being open. The interception of empathy through your book.
I think it's a great question, because many people have wrote back to me after reading the book. Many of them said that they stopped reading books for a long time. But when they read this book, they felt, wow, I got it was different because I wasn't told what to do. There was no advice. It was a story I was reading. In the story, I was grasping the messages in a very subtle, subliminal way, and empathizing with the journey, with Steve's journey and other people he comes across. And so I think it's like since we were children, when somebody says once upon a time, we all get hooked, right? Because once upon a time, what happened, right? We get curious about what's going to happen. So this is a story, and empathy is part of the journey, because you can see there's no black and white. People go through some kind of goals, and then they find out, that maybe this is not what I really want, and what do I do with it? And so you are in the journey and many people also wrote to me to say that I really identify with Steve, because what Steve is wanting is what I want. And I'm realizing, so I'm in the journey following somebody, in some kind of Alice in Wonderland, and then coming back to realize what is it for me here, yeah?
And it really was also about breaking down those assumptions, because he does feel like he's got his world together and he's got all these important things to do, and he's been sent off on this kind of frivolous journey that anyone could go deliver an envelope, climbing over, walking through hills, mountains, and climbing over spaces. But also for me, there was also this realization when he meets his senior or his boss, and that there's somebody who has achieved success and has moved beyond it because he's got this time to himself to enjoy, this beautiful space that he's in. I assume, that you're there. And so teach us a little bit through your words about the meaning of being there, of experiencing this eureka-ness, this significance, this space of knowing.
So
having traversed.
Yeah, I think there are two really important places where Steve is kind of shaken by meeting this fellow, we call it the apricot man, who seems to be so peaceful and so kind of together and yet so humble. And Steve is trying to advise him about business and what to do and what not to do, where the apricot man is just being a good listener. And then, so that's one example where he's shaken to see what does it mean to be successful, right? And secondly, when he meets the founder at the end, where somebody who's become so successful and living a life which is full of significance and not wanting to show off what they've achieved or not achieved, or not wanting to pretend, because it's not about, you see, to be significant is not a fame. It's more about a privilege. It's not something that you brag about. It's something that you are privileged to do. You're blessed to do. It's an opportunity for you to do it. And you treat it that way. You don't treat it as if I'm doing such a great job and I'm significant. You're doing it by saying thank you. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you for this wonderful privilege. Thank you for this wonderful, so it's a different kind of energy. And Steve was watching this energy and feeling that he's missing something that other people have, and yet he's supposed to be more successful in terms of the business he's doing and the deals he's making, right? So this is where you learn subliminally, and you learn through empathy, you learn through, intangibles more than tangibles.
That's absolutely fantastic. Mr. Jamal, we've had such a pleasure listening to you, and I know the audiences are going to be, really engaging the material, but I also know that you have a giveaway planned. So on our social media streams, we'll put out 2 or 3 questions that people can get back to us on, and hopefully we'll have a few copies, at least Kindle copies, that will be sent out to our audiences, and many more to engage with. So Jazakallah khair, thank you so much for the time you've given us. A word of wisdom before you leave for our audience.
So I can say a word of wisdom, or I can just tell you the questions we're asking them and which they can respond to when you send it out. So the first question was, what does Spark mean to you? I explained what Spark meant to me earlier. Second question was, what's the connection between this acronym, service and Spark, purpose and Spark, attraction and Spark, resilience and Spark, and knowing and Spark? And the last question was the difference between success and significance. So what we said was we're going to give out 10 prizes, 5 for the first 5 responders, and 5 for the best response to the 3 questions. So there will be a Kindle copy of the book, Spark, Journey from Success to Significance.
Thank you so very much. It also means that one of the conditions we'll have is that audiences must have listened to either the live transmission or ongoing YouTube transmission of this interview, so that they can really engage those questions. Once again, thank you so much, and we do wish you everything of the best with your journey. And thank you both for writing this book and for the work that you do globally to open minds and to create that spark in each of us.
Thank you, Shafinaaz, and you're doing a wonderful job in interviewing authors about their books and exposing them to the public, and making sure that both the readers and the authors benefit. So keep it up.
Thank you so much for your wonderful encouragement. And so, readers, lovers of books, thank you very much for watching. And this was this evening's edition. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.